Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I want to reflect on a couple things today. My heart is really heavy. I'm feeling a great deal of sadness. It's clear to me that this battle between Hamas and Israel and Hamas is not just a battle about sovereignty, not at all. It's really a fight that reflects the depth of the anti-Semitism which exists in that part of the world and now that we see throughout the world, and how terribly sad that is. There's a man who lives in this community. His name is Norman Freiman, and Norman was a survivor of one of the most brutal of all concentration camps, Majdanek, who has spent a lot of his later years educating children about the Holocaust, his experiences in the Holocaust, and just trying to enable students to understand, not just Jewish students, but all students to understand what had happened. I received a letter from him this morning that he sent to many of his friends and people that he's worked with. He reminded us that this day, November 3rd in 1943, was one of the most horrific days in Jewish history. 43,000 Jews were killed on this day in that year. And I look at that letter and I think about that and feel like that which I thought at some point in my adult life was part of the history of humanity is not part of the history of humanity, but it's a living, real phenomenon that we have to fight against, that we have to come to terms with, and that we struggle with. And there are all different ways that we bring that struggle. I think the first thing has to do with how important it is that we educate ourselves, our children, our communities, and the people around us, that we continue to press for Holocaust education, and we continue to press for an education about Israel, its challenges, its reason for being. And it has to be placed in a context. There is no question about that. And we have to place it in the context of a very complicated area. But additionally, there's something else that has to do with the context, because Jewish life can be reflective of a lot of tragedy, but it's also such a hopeful existence. We're reading in the Parsha about becoming a blessing to the world, that we bring particular values about human life and about truth and about justice and righteousness to the world, and it's such a central part of who we are. And so let me share a story that I heard this week. I was watching Morning Joe on MSNBC, and Jonathan Podhoretz was on, John Podhoretz, and his son had a bar mitzvah at Sutton Place Synagogue last week, and because it was Zoomed, then there's a recording of the speech that he gave to his son. His son's name is Isaac. And he was talking about why his wife and he named their son Isaac, and it had to do with last week, and this week's Parsha. Isaac means laughter. And he points out that even in the darkest days, the capacity to laugh, the capacity to look at the world with some joy and optimism is so very, very important. We know that Sarah laughed when she heard she was pregnant because she was 90 years old. Laughter is a characteristic of the Jewish people. Jewish humor is such a critical element to Jewish culture. And so we have to hold on to those things which are positive, and not by denying and not by repressing the realities, but just by saying that, it's not all bad all the time. Podhoretz then tells the story of being in front of the synagogue on Friday night as they were getting ready for a dinner for his son's bar mitzvah. And he's standing on the curb on the street, and a car pulls up, and there are two Mideastern men in the car. They roll down the window and they say, "Is this a synagogue?" And his heart's beating a little faster, and he says, "Yes." And they say, "We're Egyptian Muslims. We want you to know that we feel deeply for what has happened to Israel and to your people. We understand Israel's cause is a just cause. We feel the tragedy and we're with you." And then they drove off. And it was an incredible moment. And I think many of us have had moments like that. And it's so important to know that other people stand with us. Paul McCartney, the great Beatle, was once asked why he's optimistic. And he said, when I look around, I see that most people are good. And I think that's true with my experience and probably many of your experiences also. So in these dark days, we just have to continue to keep our spirits up. We do that here in a number of different ways, and we'll do it tonight as we sing Kabbalat Shabbat and welcome Shabbat together, and we'll do it tomorrow also. I wish you Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to days becoming a little lighter as time moves forward. And I do believe that we have a mission in this world. The mission is about the pursuit of goodness, kindness, respect, truth, justice, that we really stand for that which is good, and we will always stand against evil. Shabbat Shalom.